Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Now that Donald Trump has all but locked up the Republican nomination, he's turning his attention not just to the general election, but also another major decision. Who is he going to choose for his vice president?
Well, on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton has a sizable lead in the delegate count, but she's still facing a challenge from Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Gary Lane has the story.
And then there was one. Donald Trump is now alone in the Republican race for the White House. Wednesday, Ohio Governor John Kasich followed Ted Cruz's lead and also bowed out of the GOP field.
As I suspend my campaign today, I have renewed faith, deeper faith, that the Lord will show me the way forward.
Kasich's way forward may be to serve as Donald Trump's running mate. Kasich so far has dismissed that idea, but Trump is open to it.
Well, I would certainly consider him.
Trump said he'd also consider former opponents like Marco Rubio. He wants someone with legislative or political experience. Kasich could help Trump win the key state of Ohio, but other possibilities like Governor Nikki Haley would possibly help Trump pull some of the female vote away from expected Democrat opponent Hillary Clinton. But not so fast, says Bernie Sanders. Campaigning in Kentucky, he says he has momentum. He's won 18 states in his race to become the Democrat presidential nominee. He predicts West Virginia will be win number 19.
And with your help, Kentucky will be the 20th state.
Sanders is also pledging to win the delegate-rich state of California. He'll need to turn superdelegates already committed to Hillary Clinton if he has any chance of denying her the nomination. Some polls show he'd do better than Mrs. Clinton in a matchup against Donald Trump. The latest CNN poll shows Secretary Clinton leading nationally against Trump 54 to 41%. Voters view Clinton as better on health care, education, and foreign policy, but Trump is viewed more trustworthy on the economy. While Trump says he's going to work hard in the days ahead to unify the Republican Party and raise as much as $1 billion for the fall presidential campaign, some members of the GOP establishment say Trump will not get their endorsement. Among them, former Presidents Bush 41 and 43, and some Republicans say they'll vote for Clinton. While Trump may have some difficulties uniting a bruised Republican Party, Hillary Clinton has some challenges of her own. She still must overcome Mr. Momentum, Bernie Sanders. And then, of course, there's that email server investigation. And on Wednesday, a federal judge said she may have to give a deposition in that case. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Thanks, Gary. Interesting race. That vice presidential race, you know, John Kasich is a slam dunk for that position. If he'll take it, he might not want to take it, but he is a winning governor in a state that has to be carried in a general election. He had 16 years in Congress, was head of the House Budget Committee. He knows intimately the federal budget, and is the one person that I know in public life right now who could tame the budget. I mean, he's an incredible opportunity to put somebody, you know, somebody who could do well with Congress, because if Trump wins that thing, he's got to get along with Congress. You like it or not, he's president, but the president has only limited powers. The Congress has a great deal of power. And he's got to get his agenda, whatever that agenda is, through Congress. And also, he's got, there's what they call the plum book. There are about 5,000 jobs that are going to be open. And boy, filling those is a bear. So there's going to be an awful lot of vetting taking place. But first of all, he's got to secure the nomination, which he doesn't have yet. But man, it's still up for grabs, and it's still a little crazy. Well, maybe that's the reason why today's important. We've got to pray. Today marks the National Day of Prayer in America. At least 47,000 prayer gatherings are planned across the country. John Jessup has that story.
Pat, America has observed the National Day of Prayer for 65 years, and organizers say with war, terrorism, economic uncertainty, and a consequential election in November, we need to pray now more than ever. We live in the land of the free and the home of the brave, but the times and the world around us are in chaos.
If there was ever a day when God's people needed to grab a hold of God and to invite his manifest presence back into our midst, today is that day.
Dr. Tony Evans, prominent pastor, author, and teacher, is the honorary chair for the National Day of Prayer. He says there's power when people of faith unite.
When you have that many people at the same time coming together to call on God about the same thing, then that creates a synergy and an awesome power of presence.
The mission is to mobilize as many people as possible across the country to pray and repent, and to acknowledge America's need for spiritual, not earthly, solutions.
I think it's critical because we don't have solutions to the plethora of ills that are plaguing our nation on every single level, and that politics is not going to by itself and in and of itself bring about the changes for right that we're desperately needing in our country.
For the past 65 years, millions have prayed either locally or at the national event in Washington. Organizers say the call to pray for the nation is open to people of all faiths.
Anyone can participate, but we will not compromise the centrality of our message and our commitment to Jesus Christ. But we do not want to tell others that they cannot participate as long as we're not being told we cannot herald our faith forth.
Even as society's norms and values shift, Evans believes the day of prayer can also serve as a reminder of our national and spiritual heritage.
It has been under Christian leadership. The history of our country has been driven by a Judeo-Christian worldview, and so that has dominated the landscape. And it is important that we recognize the Lordship of Jesus Christ without apology in our emphasis on prayer.
This year's theme is Wake Up, America, highlighting the need to return to the God of our fathers and reverence for His holy name. And Evans warns that our time is running out in America. He's written a prayer of repentance that will be read at many of today's events around the country. Well, Israelis marked Holocaust Remembrance Day today, standing in silence to commemorate the victims. A 2-minute siren sounded throughout the country. When the siren blares, people stop their cars and stand silently to remember the 6 million Jews who died during the Nazi regime. At a ceremony at Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said incitement against Jews preceded the Holocaust, and he believes the same kind of incitement exists today.
This incitement against Israel is rooted in extreme Islamism and in the Arab world. But for the last years, it was joined by incitement that is no less malicious from the Western world, British Parliament members, Swedish officials, public opinion leaders in France. I must say that anti-Semitism these days is creating odd pairings.
Netanyahu said incitement and lies about Israel are spread by social media in a way Hitler could have only imagined. But he also said that same social media can be a vehicle to spread the truth. Well, in Illinois, it has become another battleground state in the national debate over bathroom policies. Dozens of families have sued the federal departments of education and justice, as well as an Illinois township, over a new federal policy that allows transgenders to use the school bathrooms of their choice. The Chicago Public Schools announced it will support the policy, allowing transgender students and employees to use whichever bathrooms and locker rooms they choose. 2 years ago, the Department of Education created new guidelines under Title IX to reinterpret its non-discrimination clause to include gender identity. Pat?
You know, if I've ever heard of a made-up charge, this whole thing is a tempest in the teapot. It's crazy. Less than 1%, a tiny fraction of 1%, are so-called transgenders. Well, okay. Let them have an operation, let them take the hormone pills, let them take whatever they want to take, and switch. Good. I'm all for it. There's nothing wrong with that. No sin, nothing. But why do we make it a big cause célèbre? Why do we fight about it? Why does the Justice Department get involved? Why does the federal government come in with mandates? I mean, what in the world is it? It's the constant driving of the agenda of anti-Christian bias. We're going to destroy any semblance of the Christian morality that exists in our country, and our government is going to be at the forefront of it. That's what you're looking at. It's one more attempt by the so-called progressives to destroy the Judeo-Christian fabric of America. But, I mean, it's like, who cares? But, you know, you've got certain organs. If you've got those organs, will you go to the bathroom designated for people that have that kind of equipment? It's no big deal. I mean, why are we making a big cause about it? I mean, you know, how many people have to go to a public bathroom anyhow, you know?
Well, I think it's no big deal if you're talking about bathrooms in the sense that in a woman's bathroom anyway, you're in separate stalls.
That's correct.
But when you talk about locker rooms, that elevates the scenario to me.
Exactly. If you've got some voyeur who likes to look at little girls with no clothes on, and you turn him loose in a female locker room, the whole thing is crazy. But it's a breakdown of the traditional morality and the attack. And I think it was Luther that said, if you fail to stand at the one place that the devil is fighting, then you have lost everything. And I think, you know, the devil is obviously fighting at one particular place. It's not that a lot of people are being discriminated against. They aren't. And yet the Justice Department has come out with a ruling that the law in North Carolina is discriminatory. Now, of course, they have to prove that in court. But, you know, people in this country are just saying, it's time for a change. We've got to get rid of that bunch of clowns that is running the show, get a new attorney general, get new people in HHS and all these other agencies. But that's why the country is mad. They're furious at what's going on. They don't want this so-called progressive agenda being jammed down their throats. John.
Pat, disturbing health news. The third leading cause of death in the U.S. is now medical errors. The British Medical Journal reports that errors kill 251,000 people every year. That's more than respiratory diseases, accidents, and strokes. One professor of surgery told the Washington Post the issue is more than having a bad doctor. The problem boils down to people dying from the care they receive rather than what they're getting care for. The survey cites a number of systemic issues that can lead to the death of someone receiving bad medical care. Researchers add the study will allow institutions to find ways to prevent medical errors. And Pat, put another way, that's about 700 people who die from medical errors every day.
That's frightening. You go to the hospital and don't come out well, you come out dead. That is not a pleasant prospect. But, you know, there's this hospital staff that has infected so many people. They've had an awful time getting rid of it. Some have and some haven't. There was so many years, you know, in the early days of medicine when the doctors, the gynecologists didn't wash their hands after performing you know, after births, and they were spreading horrible diseases, and they finally got people washing their hands, and that's a good thing. But my goodness gracious, we did a show the other day talking about these NSAIDs, these non-specific anti-inflammatory devices, and the fact that there was about 17,000 deaths from that, and 100,000 people who wound up in the hospital every year because of medical devices. I mean, they're over-the-counter things to kill pain, ibuprofen, so forth. Well, but yet when somebody comes out with what they call a holistic cure, and they say, well, why don't we take vitamins, why don't we eat well and eat the right kind of food, then everybody's up in arms that they're a bunch of quacks. I mean, it's unbelievable.